Star Wars has always had a rather interesting approach to its portrayal of the Galactic Empire. Sometimes they're comically bad at everything and serve as foils for the heroes as they save the day. Sometimes they're just the quote-unquote bad guys and the heroes can kill hundreds of thousands of Imperials without any guilt. And sometimes, albeit very rarely, the Empire is portrayed as a truly evil and ruthless force. The Galactic Empire, as described by Wookiepedia, is the fascist dictatorship that replaced the Galactic Republic at the end of the Clone Wars. Though the Empire rose to power by promising to bring order to the galaxy, it oversaw a period of harsh military rule and aggressive expansion. Yet for the vast majority of the time, we've never seen any of this. The Empire is just in control of everything and the good guys must stop them. That's basically what the movies tell us at face value. While yes, most of their evil exploits would be later expanded upon in subsequent tie-in novels and other expanded material, for the longest time, the Empire was just that, the bad guys. That is, until Andor. Despite Andor receiving drastically lower viewership than it rightfully deserves, it is without a doubt one of the best pieces of new Star Wars media since The Mandalorian. And I'll admit, when they announced that they'd be making a prequel show about a dude that died in his debut movie, I was a little more than skeptical. Yet upon watching the show, I realize it's much more than that. Andor is one of the first Star Wars shows that accurately depicts how terrifying the fascistic dictatorship of the Galactic Empire actually is. The show is less about Cassian Andor as a person and more so about how a dictatorship can turn the regular everyday normal man into a freedom fighter, and likewise how a fascistic government's power can corrupt just about anyone. However, before we get too far, let's begin by talking about the word fascist. It is used quite often in this day and age, but I have a pretty strong feeling that many people who use that word don't actually know what it means. And what's even stranger is that you can watch 5 different videos on YouTube and you'll get 5 different definitions of the word. So I'll try my best to summarize its main tenets by looking at its actual history. Fascism saw widespread prevalence in the 1920s through 40s with Europe's first fascist leader, Italian dictator Benito Mussolini, taking the name from the Latin word fascis, which refers to a bundle of sticks or the concept of a single stick being easily broken while a bundle is strong. Fascism is a political ideology that promotes the supremacy of the government, militaristic nationalism, disdain for electoral democracy, a belief in the natural social hierarchy, unquestioning loyalty to its leaders, submission of individuality, and harsh suppression of dissent. If you want a more exact definition, the Merriam-Webster Dictionary defines fascism as a political philosophy, movement, or regime that exalts nation above the individual and that stands for centralized autocratic government headed by a dictatorial leader, severe economic and social regimentation, and forcible suppression of opposition. Okay, so let's translate that into common. Fascism basically means the group is more important than the individual, and any kind of nonconformity or dissenting opinion to the government is perceived as a threat to national security and therefore will be met with harsh consequences. Or, put even more simply,
if you're not with me, then you're my enemy.
Now, I'm sure my definition will get the well actually crowd up my ass, but for the most part, this is what fascism is. Bet you didn't expect to get an actual history lesson in a Star Wars video, did you? You see, that's the Shane please shut up guarantee right there. Anyway, back to the topic at hand. In Andor, it doesn't solely focus on the titular character, and instead occasionally takes the audience behind the scenes with the Imperial Security Bureau, or ISB. The ISB is a law enforcement and intelligence agency of the Galactic Empire that is in charge with matters of internal state security and ensuring the loyalty of citizens to the Empire. Or, as Major Partagas puts it, the ISB are healthcare providers. They treat sickness, they identify symptoms, and they locate germs, whether they arise from within or have come from the outside. We primarily see the inner workings of the ISB through the eyes of ISB officer Lieutenant Dedra Miro. In our first meeting with her, Dedra is depicted as an underdog, a woman in a man's world with her fellow ISB officers undermining her for personal gain, or simply disregarding her, wishing she would just keep to herself. In fact, Major Partagas makes a comment on this.
There's a high bar for your performance, Lieutenant. Unfair, perhaps. You're supposed to be more competent and tucked away. That's why you're here.
This underdog story Dedra presents to the audience is a very good narrative trick that makes us feel for her and hope she wins. However, as her storyline progresses, Dedra starts to outsmart her dickhead of a coworker and subsequently wins the favor of her commanding officer and gain more responsibility and standing within the ISB. When this happens, we as the audience cheer at Dedra's success because she finally got what she deserves. Yet, looking back at her accomplishments, we slowly realize we've been rooting for the bad guy this entire time. Everything Dedra's been doing has been at the detriment of individual freedoms throughout the galaxy. She's a renegade, cuts corners, and plays loose with the rules, and she's rewarded because of it. Everything Dedra accomplishes is good for her individually, but horrible for everyone else. In fact, this is exactly the point. Denise Go, Dedra's actress, had this to say on the matter. Tony wrote the first scene for us to cheer for Dedra, but in the end, you don't do it anymore. She's not just a woman in a man's world, but a fascist in a world of fascists. It was important to see that power corrodes women as much as men. Dedra's slow corruption is expertly done because that's really how fascism corrupts individuals. It's not instant, it's slow, and ironically, it's like a germ that can arise from within or from the outside, corrupting the best of us. This is so refreshing to see in Star Wars because most of the time, especially in recent years, the bad guys are just evil for evil's sake. But Dedra is new. She doesn't have the Force and doesn't have a super weapon. She's smart, cunning, and really good at her job, which is terrifying for everyone. She's not here for large-scale threats. Vader is. And she's not here for controlling the galaxy. Sidious is. She's the silent threat in the background that goes after the heart of the rebellion, which again is terrifying. To see what real evil looks like in this universe is just so awesome to see, and it gives the Empire so many more layers. But what's really interesting about the depiction of one's fall to the fascistic side is also about how it affects the world at large. As the Galactic Empire becomes more and more fascistic and really more authoritarian than anything else, they tighten their grip on society. After Cassian and the rebels rob the Empire, they invoke the Public Order Resentencing Directive, which results in a 5-time tax on citizens living in systems containing rebels. Local customs, festivals, or celebrations used as a cover for rebel activity will trigger permanent cancellation, and the ISB will be free to use Army or Navy resources as well as free to do any sorts of surveillance, search, and seizures they deem necessary. To my knowledge, this swift and cruel action against the normal people of the Star Wars universe has never been put on display before. In past movies or shows, the heroes would just get away with it at the end. Job done, that end. But in reality, a fascistic government would react exactly as they did in this show. You hurt us, we hurt everyone. We are not a stick, we are a bundle. So by seeing the Empire take out their anger on the little guys of the Star Wars universe, the guys who just want to be moisture farmers and nothing else, it truly shows us how evil they can be. Again, they don't just fight the rebels. If the rebels hurt them, they hurt the collective, which is also somewhat ironic. Due to this strict rise of authoritarianism throughout the galaxy, more and more individuals are wrongfully imprisoned for X, Y, and Z bullshit reasons. Because of something totally unrelated to the crime that caused this crackdown in society, Cassian ends up being wrongfully imprisoned too. Once in prison, Cassian, the man who wanted nothing to do with the rebellion and was fine with just living his life his way, is met with the harsh realities of the Galactic Empire. Cassian realizes that this whole prison is a trap and that no one will ever get out. Yet everyone else in prison has essentially given up on, well, everything, and are just biding their time until they too can leave. Cassian is forced into a position where he has to turn himself into Luthen, the one who recruited him initially, and help these regular, normal, everyday men turn into freedom fighters. So in this grand twist of fate, due to extreme governmental overreach, they not only created another recruiter for the rebellion, but also a strong leader for them to rally behind. It's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy. You hurt the government hurts you. But if you hurt the people hurt you more. The fact that Andor talks about these topics and expands on this subject in new and unique ways slightly reignited that Star Wars flame in me that was barely clinging to life. After the extreme letdown that was Kenobi, I was dreading any new Star Wars release. However, Andor gave me hope. I really hope Lucasfilm takes note on this show. While yes, not a lot of people watched it, because I assume the general consensus is who the is Cassian Andor, and why would I watch this when I could watch Boba Fett or Obi-Wan? However, I have faith due to the extreme positive word of mouth surrounding this show that in time, it'll start to pull good numbers because Andor really deserves it. And while I don't think every new Star Wars show should be exactly like Andor, I do believe shows in the same vein as Andor should be made more. It's a good palate cleanser in between the more grandiose Star Wars epics. Because, hey, the little guys matter too sometimes. Regardless, I would love to hear your opinions on the show. Did you love it? Did you hate it? Or did you think it was boring? Thank you all so much for watching. Until next time, take care.